Suzuki community. It is October in the Verde Valley. So for me, that means in maybe 8 weeks I might be snowboarding. I ended last year's season pretty good. I have a little problem with my right turns. I hope to knock those out in the first couple trips I go up to Snow Bowl. That's Arizona Secret, really nice ski resort. So we call that an Arizona Secret. I have been asked many times to show people how I rebuild tea cases. I don't want to talk about how much things cost because 10 years from now this video won't be relevant to the prices, but I also don't know that I'll be alive 10 years from now. So I want to show people how I do it now and how you would do it in the future. And so what we have here is we've got Richard's tea case, really good customer of mine, and just he brought it to me, and I'm already seeing a few things I want to talk to you about. Number one, somebody has wrapped wire, and I don't think it was Richard, but here we have baling wire on this particular dust cover. So I can hold this dust cover and I can rotate that. So that's going to have to be either tacked weld on or fixed. We'll just call it fixed. So the first thing we got to do is tear this down, and that's what part one is. Part one is we're going to tear this down, we're going to do an inspection, and then the next part, it'll be all clean and we'll be putting it back together. And so you really want to do this with the press. I get kind of disappointed when I see people or hear people pounding it off with punches. You know, we got bearings here. And we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. We're going to be talking about main shaft inspection. We're going to be showing you bad main shafts, good main shafts. We're going to be talking about shimming. There is a lot of bad information out there from companies that really don't exist anymore. They made some videos, and I think that they made videos just so that people would ruin their stuff, and so they over shim, they over torque, so I'm not going to mention them. I'm just going to tell you how I do it. All right, first thing that we're going to do with this is we got to start the disassembly. So what I always do is I reach down in here and I always pull out the gunky rubber. Whether it's orange, yellow, black, doesn't make any difference. It's not brass. All of our stuff that we rebuild is going to go back with brass, unless it has a twin stick. Then of course this one doesn't have brass. Now you got to be super careful of the old switches, and so I always take these switches and I tell the customer disconnect it at the male female, and then what I want you to do is twist these together. So you're going to be turning the whole cable. Otherwise this stupid switch, and I mean this wire right here, it is on the verge of snapping. And so hopefully we can save it, because the good switch, that'll run you almost 42 bucks from Japan. And of course the India stuff's garbage. You can get those on eBay really cheap. So we're going to take that and lay that over here. Now there's going to be a ball in this hole, so that's the next thing I want to get out, is that ball. And then the next thing I want to do is take out the next ball and spring. Now what we're going to have here is we've got a 6mm plug, and we're going to take that plug out. When people don't take these tea cases apart correctly, they break them because they try to force them apart. So here we're going to take this plug out. Now what's in there is a spring. And just usually a tap, the spring will reveal itself. We're going to pull that out. Oh, the ball fell out. Notice I have a box here. You know why? Because we lose these balls when they bounce across the shop, and they're not that cheap to replace. Now this particular tea case has already been drained, and we're almost getting ready to start taking the flanges off. But this is another one right here. A lot of people don't know they've got to take the bolt out that holds the speedo cable in, and that's got a little nub on the end of it. Now some of you fellas back east, you're going to have some issues with this bullet, but what I do is I put a vice grip on it, I get a nice bite on it, I twist it, and I pull it straight out. And right now I want to talk to you about something that's really unusual, because these have been really hard to get for a long time. But inside this bullet, there's an O-ring, and of course the new one from Japan has got 2 O-rings, which is even a better idea. But inside here's a seal. When you buy a bearing kit from us, it comes from Japan, and starting today, we're adding these seals. I had to wait a long time to get lots of these seals, but our kits will now include the bullet seal. So you got to punch that little seal out and put it back in. so that we keep the oil in the tea case. Okay, and of course you can always call me and we'll send that to you if you happen to buy the kit. Which reminds me, stay off of eBay. Stop buying India parts. I'm not going to do a video, look it up. I did some videos on the India junk before, how it ruins our tea cases. So right from the get-go, put in what the factory put in, Koyonachi, Japan, seals, bearings, shims. I have it all. I have it all from Japan. I can build brand new tea cases. If you want a brand new tea case that doesn't have one used part in it with new gears, I can do that. They're not cheap. I almost coughed because of the price. I'm not going to tell you the price. They're not cheap. Okay, now that we've got that, now we can start taking the flanges off. So we're going to use a 27 here, I believe it is. Now a lot of times you can take these flanges off just by holding them, and that's what I'm going to try to do, because this is an Arizona tea case. It doesn't have a lot of rust on it, but I might have to put a bar on here just to hold it. Let's see. Now, our kits come with new style flange nuts. Now, this is the old style. Of course, this one got stuck. There we go. This is the old style. It's a two-piece. Oh, I love it when they pull off. First thing we're going to do is inspect this and make sure it's not rusted, because that's what the seal's going to ride on. We don't want that to have any kind of depression, rust, or anything like that. So this is the two-piece. It's old school. We use the new ones to put it back together that are going to be a one-piece flange. Okay, we got one off. Let's go for another one. Now this is the one that's got that baling wire trying to hold on to the dust cover. So let's see what happens here. That would come off okay. And there you see what happened. So we can fix this, no problem. Now I do have a set price for when I do work on tea cases, and it basically covers all the labor. It just doesn't cover the parts. So we can do whatever you want with the tea case. I mean, whatever you want. It's just going to cost more for labor, excuse me, not for labor, but for parts. So we can put in whatever we need to make this a long live tea case. Now, I want you to know that your two front flanges, they're going to be the same. They're interchangeable. And a lot of you guys are pretty smart about this, but Suzuki used two patterns. This is a small pattern. It uses 8mm bolts that are very similar to 5/16 in size. And so it's very easy to recognize a small pattern from a large pattern. And basically your early models, if you go 86 small, 87 small, 88 small, but right around 1989 you'll start seeing large flanges. And what's worse is when you have people mixing and matching and you've got one drive shaft that doesn't quite work. There's a way around that, but really the best is to have all matching. Now your rear flange is going to be quite a bit deeper, because as you can see here, the fronts, they go through a seal, the back does not go through a seal. And the reason why it doesn't go through a seal, oh, we got a problem here. Someone's been into this tea case. This seal was put in flush. So this seal, someone's worked on this tea case, and then of course I've got some yellow paint up here. I don't know if I'll be able to save it to see who did this, but I've done a video about this. The retainer right here is supposed to come all the way through this seal, so the fluid leaked out of this tea case. These seals are depressed, and I'll show that to you when we're assembling it, but that is a problem right there. So I've already discovered that this, whoever worked on this, shame on you. Okay, now we can start disassembling it. So this is all going to be 12 work now. And one of the things I like to do, I'm not going to do for you today, but I like to take a piece of cardboard and kind of draw a tea case. I've done so many of these, I know what each bolt is. And a lot of people go, oh, well, these top bolts, they stick through. They must not be right. No, from the factory, those do stick through, as you can see there. So first thing I do is take off the front cover. And all of these bolts here, these are the dangerous ones. These are the ones, if you get them mixed up, you can bust the case, because there's some blind holes and there's some longer, shorter bolts here. So you don't be driving long bolts into a blind hole. You'll bust inside, and that will cause it all to leak. Not good. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bang on this front cover. I got to break the gasket. Being gentle, because it is aluminum. I don't want to buy them another one. Yeah, I got front cover castings, because sometimes these break. If your drive shaft is binding up on the cross member, you can break this pretty easily on the inside here where the bearing is. Alright, let's see if I can find a pry bar here. Getting ready, yeah, there she goes. She's starting to break there. Factory, or whoever did this one, because this isn't factory. I already know that. It isn't factory. Now what I don't want to do is I do not want to stick a screwdriver in there on that surface and try to pry it off. So I will be patient with this and break that gasket and pull it off, okay? So that's your front cover. Now this is a, we'll talk more about this later. This is the front output gear, and I can tell this is an early model Suzuki. And again, on the assembly, I will show you the difference. Suzuki had a lot of problems with this gear popping out of four-wheel drive. You'd just be driving and you'd hear something that sounded like a broke axle. Like when a Burfield breaks, there's that very sharp metallic sound. And what it was is that the coupler was popping off of this and then popping back on. So it makes this really horrendous noise. I remember 20-some years ago with my first Samurai, oh, that bearing's bad. I remember that I thought that I had a broken axle, and I took it all apart, no broken axle. I went wheeling again, no broken axle. This is before we kind of knew that these existed. And then come to find out that the drive shaft would stop rotating when the noise happened. The front drive shaft would just stop. And that's when we found out, oh, some of the cars have got better gear, and that's called a heavy-duty front output. All of you want to get that if you're off four-wheeling. If you're not four-wheeling, you don't need that gear. So that guy there will get ready for the press. The next thing that we do here is super important, and that is we have to feel if there's any burrs on the notches where the sticks go in, the stick, because I make twin sticks, that's why I said plural, and there are no notches that I can feel. Oh, there's one. Alright, so I've got to go get my diamond file. Hold on here, I'll be right back, because I can't separate this without sanding that off, so I'll be right back. I forgot about this, I had to go find this. So basically I can see them, feel them, and what I've got to do is get that file in there, and I have got to get those burrs off of this rod, your high-low rod, because the 2-4 rod is not going to go through the casting right now, but I do not want any burr right there to scrape the aluminum tunnel. So we've got that sanded. Now we're going to move on to taking off the center piece right here. Now this is where, again, if you would just draw your T-case and you would put your bolts in where you took them out, and I don't do that anymore. I used to have this really cool thing, and we just don't use it, where it was metal and it looked just like this. We just don't do that, because we're going to clean all these bolts up real quick. Now these don't have to come out in any special order. This is always funny to me to see the factory skid plate. So if you didn't know what this is your factory skid plate. Yeah. Many of you know I make a super cradle to protect these, because when we put gears in this T-case, you get two-wheel drive reduction, because there's no chain in this T-case. And in a minute, you're going to see how there's 3 banks of gears, and by changing those ratios, you can put bigger tires on, and then the engine and transmission thinks that you've got small tires. Very, very cool T-case. let's not forget our little keeper. And let's see if we've got them all out here. And we do. Okay, so again, I've got my plug, my spring, my ball. I've got the bullet out. So this guy should separate pretty easy. Now what's going to happen is this coupler here is going to move out. And this coupler is in the correct position. So whoever did this last time, they got that right. If you hold this coupler sideways, you can see it's a little bit round. Now, you've got these little casting tabs around the T-case. If you tap lightly and go around, you can bust those right off. It happens a lot, but that's where we want you to start breaking the T-case apart. I'm going to flip this guy around here, because there's one on the bottom. Be patient. Now, what you've got here is not only the glue that you're breaking on the gasket, or the silicone, or whatever the last guy used, but you have alignment bushings, and they're very tight. So I'm starting to work that off, and I've cleared that. Now, here in your idler gear, we want to keep all the gears in the T-case. We don't want this all to fall apart. So I am going to push that back in, punch it back in, as I push this out. I'm just now clearing the bearings. Almost got it out. And you can see, I'm not kidding, it just falls apart. Now this is where I've got to get that one. This is going to be your high-low rod. We need to get that through. There we go. Come on. See, because I sanded that, it went right through the hole without scratching up the hole. Now what I dropped here was the coupler. This is your front coupler. So when you turn the front coupler sideways, you can see you have one side that's more rounded than the other. That goes towards the engine during reinstallation. So here's what I'm talking about. Well, that's interesting. This is an aftermarket T-case. And so what I mean by that is it's got a very small input shaft. And I'm going to pop that guy out so you can see what I'm talking about. Really small, which means this is probably, I'm going to say about a 6'4" T-case. So, to give you an idea, that's stock, and so this is going to be like a 6'4" or a 6'5". I'll find out in a minute when I see some identification there. But you can see there, by reducing this gear and increasing this gear size, you can fool your engine into thinking that you have smaller tires. So let's not mix up these sets. Now, it's very easy to check these bearings. These bearings should not wiggle. That's a good bearing. That's a good bearing. That's a good bearing. So this fella doesn't need bearings. Someone just didn't assemble it correctly because it came in because it was making noise. So now we're going to pull the idler off. I'm going to check the idler bearings. Now on the idler shaft you have 2 needles and you have a spacer. So that's for your idler shaft. You also have 2 thrust washers. And so we pulled those out. I'm just kind of taking a look here and seeing one, oh, that's starting to burn. I would say that was low on oil. Oh, yeah, it's definitely started to burn. And then finally, here's your 2/4 fork. When you're looking at your 2/4 fork, you can tell if you have a lot of material left because it's raised up from the center. When these forks are flush with the casting, they don't have any more meat on them. Now what's going on here is that this coupler is rotating at high speed inside there when you're driving and it's locked on. And so you do get wear, and I can see that there's wear on here, but other than cleaning it up, I don't have an issue with that. And here's the main shaft. This is really the big one here. So we're going to get this guy out. And there's that problem I was talking to you about. That seal is flush on this side. It needs to be flush on this side, and it's a good 1/4 inch down. And so it was not running on this retainer. This is the retainer right here that must go through the seal. Okay, so this bearing is good, and that bearing is good. So we really only need one replacement bearing. Now we're going to take this case, and we're going to put them in our big ultrasonic machine, so when you see this next, it's going to look like shiny aluminum. So that's the only bearing I got to replace. I don't replace good bearings. There's no reason to. But what I do need to do is take you folks to the next step, and that's I've got to inspect this main shaft. And I can't really do that by spinning the gears, but I'm going to anyways. That feels good. But this one was making a whiny noise. Now let's see whose gears these are. Well, I don't see any identification, and of course I can recognize Japanese gears. Oh, I think I know whose gears these are. I think that these gears are the ones that used to come from Europe, and they have kind of square teeth here, because I don't see any markings. And the Japanese are very distinct. They've got their own way of identifying them. So I really can't see any. Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted to see. This is a trail gear set. Good gear set. I've sold a lot of these. So this is going to be a 6.5. That's what this one is, a 6.5. And I'm not real happy with this shaft right here. Let's see if I can clean that up and get a better picture of it. So his noise is most likely coming from that spot right there where the needle is. Definitely been wearing through. So I'm probably going to put, oh yeah, and then the grease is covering it up. Most likely that's where the noise is coming from. I'm getting scratches right there through the hard, so I'll be replacing that and a couple of needles. Okay. I need to take a break here, change my gloves. I'll be right. Okay, I had to go out and get my special made little tool here. We shaped this, man, maybe around 2005. And I just really love my old tools, you know. I hate it when my tools get misused. Okay, so there's a clip, and you're going to get a close-up of that. You got to get in there, open that little clip up. This is the coupler. I call this the inner hub. I'm not sure what Suzuki calls it. Be careful with this clip, but it pries off pretty gently. That's what that clip looks like. Whoops, come on, we're almost there. It wants to come out. It wants to come out. There we go. Be careful with this clip. Now, sometimes these get stuck. Oh, I like it when it comes out. Okay, so this is your inner hub gear, and I can get to explain a little bit more about your 2.4. So basically here, what you've got is you've got your rear flange is here, and it's on the main shaft. And what you have is a coupler in the middle, and it goes between high and low. Then you have another fork here with the coupler, and it goes 2-4. And so this is how this works. When the coupler engages the inner hub and locks on to the, where'd you go? When it locks on to here, let's get you a coupler and show you. Okay, you see that? So now it's in 4-wheel drive, because it's all locked together on the main shaft. And then when this comes back and sits on there, then this doesn't spin under power. And so again, 2-4 here, high-low here. Very, very, very simple system, very well built. Now that we have that off, that clip, now we can start pressing. So let's talk about what we have to press off, and then we're going to go over to the press. The first thing we have is the retainer, and then we have a bearing, then we have the speedo drive, we have a washer, we have our low gear, and then the coupler. Now you can only go to the low gear. And then on the other side, you start with the bearing, you have a thrust washer, you have the high gear, so that basically you've got two presses here. Two directions, I should say. All right, let's go over to the press and take this apart for our final inspection. Okay, so what I have is the clamshell bearing remover, and of course I built my deck, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press that bearing off. And of course when I put pressure on it, I want to see that move, and I can hear it also. I built this press just for doing Suzuki work. Now, this is not going to fall on the floor, but I'm very, very careful to make sure that it doesn't. And there it released. Okay, so we're going to raise that up. Now, I took off the big front bearing first. As you can see here, we're going to be reusing that. That's a good bearing. There's my clamshell. You know how those work. And now what I'm going to do is lift off the high gear, the gear that is the smaller gear. Now I want you to know at this point that these two gears, and I will compare them later, they're different heights. And so you do not want to mix up these needle bearings between those gears, because you cannot put the T-case together. And I'm not going to tell you the fellow's name because I don't want to shame him, but he pressed a T-case together because it wouldn't go back together, and because he had these mixed up, he blew up the case. So that is your high gear, and now I can inspect this main shaft for that area. Let me get a rag here and clean this off, because this is super critical. This one is past borderline. Now you should be able to see that you have got a much lighter gray. It's supposed to be chrome, just like a crank on an engine. And I've got a lot of lateral gray, which means that you could run this again if you didn't mind it being whiny or noisy. So I'll talk to the customer and see if he wants to get a new main shaft. But in high gear, this is going to be sloppy, that gear is going to walk, and it's going to whine in the high. Okay, I also took my coupler off there because that come off, and now you can see what I mean. This gear here is fixed to the main shaft, and that's why I have to flip it over and do the clamshell again. So give me a minute and I'll set that up for you. This is very critical at this juncture because a lot of people think they can put the gear on top of the tower, but you would have three press things to press off. You've got the retainers pressed on, you have the bearing that's pressed on, you have the speedo gear that's pressed on. You really should only do the bearing and the retainer, and then you can go ahead and press the speedo off using just the gear. And again, I'm going to make sure that my gear does not fall and hit anything, and I'm going to start pressing off the bearing and the retainer for the seal. I'm going to put pressure on it, and I'm going to hear a big bang. And now I know that I'm moving, so I'll go ahead and put all 20 tons into it. This is why you need a press. Do it right. There we go. So as you can see there, I've got two things I pressed off, the good bearing and the retainer, but I still have got that speedo gear on. Do not do all of it at once. Be patient. Do it right. So very quickly here, I'm going to set that up. Now I can push on the gear. And what I'm taking off now is the last thing is the speedo. This is what drives your speedo. That's why it's called the speedo gear. And now we can look at the main shaft as all the pieces are off. So this is the end of the inspection, and I have the same thing. I would use this for like a buggy, because buggies are noisy, and I'm really hoping the video kind of shows you the discoloration and that is what is causing his noise going down the road. And so we have new main shafts with the new synchro design, and of course I have the real genuine coil correct needles. We don't use any of that India garbage. So that concludes this video. Let's wrap it up. Okay, we're going to wrap this video up. This is part 1 of Samurai TK's rebuild. What we're going to do is clean these parts up, and maybe next week or the week after, pretty quickly, we will be assembling it the way I want you to assemble your T-case. Because this T-case was done by somebody that didn't know what they were doing. No shame. But there's no shims in this T-case, and the gears were both rocking, both the main shaft and the input. So we're going to fix that. We did a close-up to show you what a bad surface is here, so that picture will be as a still picture, but unfortunately this is not something that I would use in a daily driver Samurai or one that you want to be quiet. Gears already whine. Trail Gear Gears we have here. It's a good company. I am a representative for them, or I guess you'd call me an authorized dealer for Trail Gear. So if you do want Trail Gear, you give me a call. I will always take care of you. We'll say it that way. They're very stringent about minimum advertised pricing, so I do have to have my prices on the website, what they demand that I do, but you know, everybody's my friend in this this cult that we're in. And so with that, I want to say, go wheeling, be safe, have fun, and don't forget to subscribe. We have 5,500 subscribers. Some of my friends that have been doing this for a year longer than me have like 20,000 subscribers. Please subscribe. I hope I earned your subscription with over 130 videos of what to do and how to do it. So please tell your Suzuki friends that Zuk's Off-Road is the place to buy parts from. Zuk's Off-Road is the place to do business with. And that's it. This is the one that's really getting me. I will replace the idler, so you'll see that new. I will talk to Richard about replacing his main shaft and see what he says, because this is his baby, and he doesn't like it whining, so we're going to have to replace some parts. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye. We'll see you in part 2.